Okay, so we'll call to order at 5 p.m. So before we make an approval of the agenda, I'd like to make a motion to vary the agenda. I'd like to add business arising from the minutes as 3.2. I'll move that amendment if anyone would be willing to second. Councillor Julik, excuse me, thank you. Any discussion on the amendment? Okay, I'll call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Carried, thank you. So we'll add 3.2, business arising from the minutes. Okay, so we'll move on to 2.1, approval of the agenda. Is anyone willing to motion to approve the amended agenda? Councillor Noxana, can you press your mic?
That all items in the November 14th, 2022 Policies and Priorities Committee meeting agenda be approved as presented, including 3.2.
As amended, thank you.
Amended, yeah.
Seconder? Councillor Julik, any discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Carried, thank you. Okay, moving along. So we'll move down to 3.1, adoption of the minutes. I did have clarification. You don't need to be in attendance to motion to accept the minutes as presented. So is anyone willing to motion to approve the minutes as presented? Excuse me. Councillor Julik.
I'm assuming I just,
Read
that
that
the
motion.
August 8th, 2022 Policies and Priorities Committee meeting minutes be approved as presented.
Seconder. Councillor Dussault. Any discussion? All in favor? Carried, thank you. Just for future reference for everyone, some things we might want to read the full motion, but if we want to just move it quickly, we can always say as presented, just to save us a mouthful. Okay, so we'll move on to 3.2, business arising from the minutes. So I do have some business arising from the minutes. So for everyone's reference, page 5 or page 3 or 4 of our minutes, I had a question regarding sign posts. So about 2/3 way down the page, we see that sign posts are on hold while waiting for feedback. I just wanted to ask staff if who we were waiting for feedback from. Was it the public? Was it some stakeholder groups? And if we've received any of that feedback yet.
Good afternoon, Council. The signposts, yes, are on hold because we are waiting for feedback, and I believe we're waiting for feedback from at least 2 First Nations, but I'm not 100% certain. But I know one for sure. So that is something that we can definitely check into and update Council next time.
Thank you, Ms. Torval. And just so everyone's aware, the signpost is a project that we've been working on for the last while, where we had some directional signage made by a local artist that we wanted to have erected to highlight the directions and distances to different features in the area. Like this way is 54 kilometers to Canusio Falls, et cetera, et cetera. So, but we are just doing our due diligence and making sure that it's all, everyone's happy with it. So, because there's been some misconceptions about it. So, is there any more business arising from the minutes? Anybody has? Seeing none, we'll move down to 4, petitions and delegations. Seeing none, we'll move down to reports. 5.1, bylaw number 678, council procedure, a bylaw. So this is a report dated November 14th, 2022 from the Interim CAO regarding bylaw number 678, 2019, council procedure bylaw. I'll receive this for a discussion. Anyone willing to second that? Councillor Julik, thank you. All in favor for receiving this item for discussion? Opposed? Carried. Okay. So here we go. I'm sure everyone had an opportunity over the long weekends to read our council procedure bylaw. So I wanted to throw some ideas at people. I don't want to make any changes as it stands because I think as a council, we sort of need to first understand how we should be conducting ourselves, how our meetings are conducted, and then we can make changes. It doesn't make much sense to change things now because we still need to feel them out, but yes. So one of the things that, in speaking with staff, I think we may want to be looking at in the future is on page 13 of our agenda. If we look at the policies, if we look at cancellation and postponements, we can see that policies and priorities, committee meetings can be, oh, wait, sorry. No, I'm going fast. So at the bottom of the page, 6B is where I'm going to be speaking to. So regular policies and priorities committee meetings can be canceled by the mayor for any reason or by the corporate officer for a lack of agenda items. That has only ever happened once, but we may want to allow that cancellation opportunity to be allowed for regular council meetings because what happens is, thank you, Councilor Jill. What happens is we need to first have a meeting to cancel the meeting if we don't have any agenda items. So it's an interesting mechanism to allow us for cancellations if we don't have anything on the agenda. Councilor Julik.
I had a few different questions, and I don't know, this may not even be the bylaw that I need to be looking at for this, as I flip through my pages again. So in the procedural bylaw, there was a list for agenda items, or how, I shouldn't say agenda items, how the agenda would be laid out. But there's no place on the agenda for a closed meeting. And so I guess what I'm wondering, as we wrestle a little bit with with HR, I'm wondering if we don't have a closed meeting regularly until we get that kind of sorted out, and for council to be a little bit more brought up on what HR looks like. Now, before, like, I get that that's playing with the trains a little bit, but I think we have the idea that we have to hire a CAO, and then to have some ideas, I think, beyond that, like to do with collective agreement things, like when we have, disputes isn't the word I'm looking for. Basically, when something has to go to the union or a staff member has to be looked at, and the words are like escaping my brain. I think Aline probably knows, Miss Torville knows what I'm talking about. But anyway, so I was wondering about that. And, okay.
If it's okay, Councillor, we'll deal with your first subject and then we'll move on to your second.
Okay.
Thank you. So just to grasp what you're asking about, are you asking about the mechanism to allow for closed meetings, or are you trying to make suggestions for closed agenda topics? Because if you have requests for closed agenda topics, the way to address that would be to speak with our staff and the mayor who create the agendas.
And that would work. I just, so I guess in one of my roles, we generally just have a closed meeting. Every time we have a regular board meeting, we have a closed meeting as well, and that allows for staff to give us an update on what HR looks like, and it's just basically if anything pops up. It could be a 15-minute meeting, it could be a 30-minute meeting, but it's just a regular occurrence. And for me, what I don't see, and maybe you guys do have a regular closed meeting, but that talks about HR. I don't know if that would be something.
Excuse me, Councillor. I took you off the queue, so. So as it stands, just because we are bound differently in the municipal realm, we are bound by the community charter, and we cannot have closed meetings unless we have a particular citation from the community charter, and I believe that is 90 of the community charter, and we have to cite that. So if there is any issues that would take us to closed, there will be on the resolution to closed agenda items. So if you see on page 17, the resolution to close meeting will have those reasons why we're going into close, but they're not scheduled regularly until they are as needed. And from my perspective, HR issues are dealt with by our CAO, and they're not so much in our need-to-know realm, in my opinion. And any sort of discussion does need to stay in public. So maybe staff, if wants to talk to that at all.
Yes, thank you, Council. Yes, any issues relating HR in general, if it's to do with employees of the district, then that is dealt with by the CAO and the relevant staff at that time. I will say again that the only time that there will be times when council will have to make a decision, and that is instances where there may be an issue that could not be resolved through the grievance process with the union, and then the recommendation may be to go to arbitration. And so then that would come to council in a closed meeting under 91C, labor relations or employee relations, and to have approval to proceed to arbitration. And that is because generally when it's arbitration, there's a lot of dollars involved, and we need to get council approval to spend that money for that budget to move to arbitration. And that's where council fits into, the HR realm of things, so.
Thank you, Ms. Torval. Ms. Julik, Councillor Julik, excuse me.
So I'm hoping that this is the place to have these discussions that, because we're talking about it being more informal, because I could totally do this outside of a meeting as well to just get clear on it. Because what I'm looking for is I'm not looking for us to be able to give direction. What I'm looking for is for us to be able to keep a finger on the pulse of what's going on within the HR departments. Like, we're like the grievances and stuff. So like I said, my experience is then we get an idea of what grievances have been brought up. So then we could know if there's 3 or 4 grievance things going on at a time, or address something that we've maybe heard within the community that's maybe not coming back to the CAO. And I'm not looking for a thing to start pointing fingers or anything. I'm just looking for a process.
Thank you, Councillor Julik. So I guess my question to you is, what would be the intended purpose of getting that knowledge of what our employee is doing? Is it, like, what purpose would that serve? Because our purpose is to set the direction of the community, and if we give our authority to our CAO to make those decisions, and I'd be concerned if we are in on the know, or, the information, we would be opening the door to get into the kitchen, which is a dangerous place to be in. So, yeah, so. Councillor Julik.
I would say that I'm not looking to play with the train so much as if our job is to know what's going on within the community and to be the people who are in charge of the money, if we have a better knowing of, let's say there's 6 grievances coming up, which is unusual, then that would be something we could ask, is there something that we need to do? Can we help with training? Can we help with professional development? Can we help with something else in there? Like, to me, it's more about trying to find a helpful spot within it, because I do think it's still within our purview, because it's still within, like, it's about the money. It's about, like, if we have big staff turnover, why do we have big staff turnover? If I'm wondering about it, then to me, if it's a standard report that comes, then that gives our HR department an idea as well. Like, if they're looking, holy crap, we have 5 grievances happening right now. Why is that? Like, is this something with this department, or is it something with another department? So for me, it's just a regular report that I would be requesting which would have to be given in closed because it was human resources.
To me, that sounds dangerously close, like we are wanting information or that is not within our purview. Like, I understand what you're trying to say, like, we are in the know in the community. We are in the know, and our job is to set policies, bylaw, and what's happening over at Public Works, or, you know, if we're having issues with our staff, and if we're having, what you're saying, union disputes, that is all in the hands of our CAO. And as much as it might be interesting for us to know, it's not our purview. I mean, if it becomes a larger issue, like regular course of events, in that case, staff would be bringing forth their suggestions and ideas, because we are policy setters, bylaw setters. We're not managers. Councillor Julik.
And I feel like we could probably debate this back and forth, and if nobody else has a taste for exploring this issue, I'm fine to let it go. I would respectfully disagree with you. I think that it's not playing with the trains. It's getting information so that we can do the best job we're here to do. And HR was a big deal in the community when I was out talking to folks and before I was out talking to folks. So I think the information, like, I'm not asking for names. All I would say is, okay, well, we have a grievance filed because of whatever. Like, I mean, I wouldn't be looking for names. I would just be looking for the occurrences.
Thank you there, Councillor Julik, and staff like to respond to that.
Thank you. I want to reassure council that we have, I think, 6 departments within the district. They're not just HR. We have about, just so you know, we have about 70 employees, and that increases during the summer months, so 80, 90, maybe close to 100 employees. And as you know, there will be disputes amongst employees and employer, like, and managers, and things will come up. And the thing is, with union employees, they have a process that they must follow, and it is to file a grievance. So that's how their disputes are handled. And we use that word dispute and makes it sound like it's a big ugly thing, but it's not. I mean, somebody might be upset because they're not getting, a couple of hours overtime that someone else is getting, those things, and those are handled through grievances. So if you hear that there's grievances, like, hey, you can come in and talk to the union president if you like, or whatever, and you're gonna find that, yeah, there are grievances and they will be ongoing, so. And when something comes up, like I said, that really needs council's input and support to proceed to the next level with a dispute that can't be handled, through the normal means, then we will come and let you know, for sure, because we will need to. We will be required to. So I trust I've helped alleviate some of your concerns, and I appreciate that you are concerned about the well-being of the district, and I totally understand that you have to answer to the public as well, and so, and if you come across residents who've got questions or concerns about something, give them my number, please.
Yeah, CAO at DTR is simple for a reason.
Yes.
I had a question for you, Ms. Torville, before we move on to you, Mr. Councillor Julik. Now, if there is any disputes within your union or grievances, is that information public or is that confidential?
That is confidential.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Julik.
All right, I can live with that, and when I hear the information and have a question of my own, I will just reach out to you. I guess my question then would be, when I reach out to you through an email, is that something that I would include the whole council in, or would that just be something I sent directly to you?
Thank you. That's a good question, Councillor Julik. You can, you don't really have to include the whole council if you don't feel, you just, if you're on the spur and you're sending an email to me. But when I respond, I will respond to all of council. Okay?
Thank you, Ms. Torville. So, Ms. Councillor Julik, I know that you had another discussion point, so did you want to raise that now? Councillor Julik?
I didn't see in the bylaw, the procedure bylaw, there was a time, so if we wanted to change the time of the meetings, we could just bring that up as a motion on any agenda, I'm guessing?
Ms. Torval?
Thank you, Council. That's a good question. You're full of good questions tonight. I like that. The meeting schedule will be presented at the next regular council meeting for your approval, and that is a time where you can discuss if you want the time changed and frequency of meetings and all that stuff surrounding the meetings.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, there we go. Getting the hang of the mic system a little better. Before I bring up next point, does anybody else have anything they want to talk about with the this agenda item? So there's a few things I want to bring up. I want to give people opportunity to speak to. Okay, I'll move down to page 16, number 14. Just wanted to throw a little bug in all of your ears. I'm not interested in making a motion to change this at all, but one of the things that has happened in the past is that we get email correspondence. Sometimes somebody will send an email to all of council and they neglect to include our CAO or something happens, and I think it's important that even though correspondence is coming in electronically, that we are still discussing it as a council at a council meeting. So I'm aware that Ms. Torval is working on a policy on this for how electronic correspondence will work in addition to our agendas. But yeah, that just as a heads up, this does happen, and you know, we definitely want to make sure that people have their time in front of council to have their issues discussed, in my opinion. And with that, in the previous council, we can always change this, but in the previous council, if we did receive a piece of correspondence from the public, we would try and do our best to at least bring it up, discuss it, and have a response to them. I think it's reasonable for all of council to respect the public. You know, they take their time to send us a letter. The least we could do is send them, say, hey, thanks for your input. This is what we've discussed, or you can refer back to whatever the date was we discussed it, and they can refer back to the live stream or the recording. And I believe staff already does that, but best practice, I think. So before I move to the next one, any more? Councillor Julik?
Okay. Yes, I was looking at, now I lost the page. It's about when you bring a motion forward and it can't be revisited unless the mayor says, but it doesn't say how long, like, so do I have to wait a year if I do a debate? Sorry, I do have a note here that's, so number 42, it's on page 23. So a reconsideration of a defeated matter may not be taken at the same meeting, fair, and that's normal. And the mayor can return that resolution within a month, but I'm wondering if I could bring it up within a year. Like if that's just something that I've had, that was part of another board, that within a year you could bring it up again. So it's just so you're not bringing a bunch of stuff back and all the time. So let's say it was something that was defeated, and then a year later I wanted to give it another go. Is that something that would have to be in this bylaw, or?
That is an interesting question. Councillor Julik? Go ahead, Ms. Torval.
Thank you. Interesting question indeed. I would need to look into this further to see. Yeah, for sure.
I think like this procedure is talking about like more information has come back. You ask the mayor to bring it back on the next agenda, the mayor presiding over that meeting, and then they have the decision to bring it back in a council meeting. from what I understand and what we've done in the past, is that if we wish to reconsider a motion, one of the people from the winning side can ask for reconsideration, and we can bring that motion back to have another discussion about it. Yeah, so there is opportunity for us to re-debate a motion, that if we feel that we made a mistake or what have you, and we can do that. But yeah, that is an interesting thing. Can we just keep talking about it? Can we bring it back? I guess, yeah. You have the discussion. What's everyone's thoughts about that? Like, do you think it's reasonable that if somebody made a motion, we made a motion and it was defeated, that we bring it back in a few months' time, 6 months' time, never, you lost it and move on? Like, what's everyone's thoughts? Councillor Noxana.
I feel that it's fair to bring up, but only after an amount of time. You can't bring it up at every council meeting for the next 4 years. That's not acceptable. But if you brought forward a motion, it's defeated, and then after the fact, you think, oh, hey, I have some really good points that I could have added. I don't know, 6 months, a year? There has to be a specific time frame in there, and then you can bring it back up, or only bring it up so many times, or something that could be added. I don't know what the standard would be in.
Well, that's the thing. We can make that up. So thank you for your comments, Councillor Noxana. Councillor Julik?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, like, my thought was a year, like, because I think a year gives everybody time to rest on the item. I don't see it happening a lot, but I would just like it to be there, and I would like it to be in a way that, like, if I'm thinking this bylaw is where it needs to be, unless it's something that's part of Robert's rules, but I don't know. So yeah, I'm content to wait, and we could maybe make the adjustment, but yeah, a year it was the timeline I was thinking about.
Thank you, Councillor Julik. Ms. Torval?
Thank you. And just to be clear, we're talking about reconsideration of a defeated motion, correct? I would stand, and thinking about it a little bit since we're discussing this now, when a motion is defeated, it's defeated. So I'm thinking that whatever the issue around that motion may have been, it may be something that, yes, could be brought up in the future, at a future time. I don't know that it would be necessary to put a time limit on it, but again, not like the next meeting, obviously, but because you got 30 days to vote on a motion to reconsider it. So, yeah, because once a motion is defeated, it's defeated.
Councillor Clicklash, go ahead.
If a motion's defeated and you make some changes to that article that you're putting through, I can't see why you can't put it through again. It shouldn't require a time limit. You can just, if you want to put it through, you put it through to the CAO and she brings it to council.
Thank you, Councillor Clicklash. I guess I'm kind of curious what everyone's thoughts on what that would look like in actuals, right? So let's use, I don't know if I want to use a very hot topic item, but let's say we want to make a motion to have all the chairs in the gallery blue. Now, Councillor Clicklash, are you saying that if Councillor Dussault wants to, in fact, after we've defeated the motion to change the chairs to blue, Councillor Dussault says, you know what, let's change it to green. Are you suggesting that that should be perfectly fine? Or are you saying that we should be changing the chairs to blue? Excuse me, hold on, Councillor Clicklash, do you mind just turn on your mic, please? And thank you.
I think it would be more evident that there was a change in the proclamation or whatever, and you could bring it back again. Any councillor should be able to do that.
Okay. Councillor Jew, excuse me. Councillor Clicklash, sorry, I didn't realize that you were not finished. Do you mind turning on your mic again, and I'll give you the opportunity to speak?
Anyone should be able to do that, bring it back, as long as there's some significant change in it that would change what council wants, votes on, right?
Yeah, then my question to you is what would constitute a significant change? Because it's easy to say significant, but to define it, I think is
Well,
important.
I can't say that right now because we don't have anything in front of us and we haven't seen the change.
Okay,
But changing tears to green or whatever, it's got nothing to do with this. This is more important stuff, right?
I do understand what you're saying, but when we're dealing with stuff like this, I think it is important to have specificity because it is, you'd be surprised how things can potentially go awry when we don't have specificity to what we are allowing for our conduct, so. I appreciate the conversation, but excuse me, I think Councillor Julich is also waiting to speak, so let's pause this and let Councillor Julich jump in there. Councillor Julich?
So an example I would give is, let's say I think that our recordings should not be on YouTube. I think that there's a significant safety risk, let's say, to having it on YouTube rather than having it within the council's, within the District of Tumbler Ridge's ownership. I haven't looked into it. I don't know. I'm just bringing this up as an example. So let's say I bring that up and it's defeated. I think that it's legitimate to say a year down the road, things may have changed, whether it was like the political climate out in the community, whether it's something, some privacy thing that happened. I just think that things change. And so for me, those are the things that I'm thinking for within a year. I'm thinking that there's stuff like that there might not be a significant change, like Councillor Clickash has said, but that if somebody on council feels strongly enough about something and they want to bring it up once a year, I think that's acceptable. And I wouldn't want to hamstring us in that regard. So if that was to be in the bylaw, I would ask for that change to be, I would make a motion bringing that forward at council, that be changed so that we have that allowance in there so that it doesn't make it so somebody cannot bring something. But I think a year is a long enough time. Do I think it'll be used lots? No. But do I think there should be an option there? Yes.
Thank you, Councillor Julich. So now that we have clarification, what's everyone's thoughts? Do we think that we go back and we look at motions again? I know from my standpoint, I would be concerned about us rehashing debates that we've already had. If there's new information, it's reasonable to discuss those things again. But yeah, my concern would be that we're rehashing our discussions and reopening debate which already has been set. What's everyone else's thoughts there? Fair. Okay. Councillor Noxana.
I think that it's fair to have, if a councillor believes it is that important, the motion is that important, have the debate again in a year. If they feel that strongly and that they have more information on the topic, we're not doing it twice a month, once a year, maybe.
Excuse me. Okay, so that being the case, if we want to make that change to allow for that mechanism, I'd be happy to take a motion which we would refer back to a council meeting. Councillor Julich?
Okay, I didn't think we made motions here. I thought that we just referred them back to the council meeting.
So if we're making a big change like this, I think it's good to, again, add specificity to staff so they know what they're bringing back. Because in this instance, I apologize, but I do not agree with your suggestion. So having staff create a change based on one councillor's suggestion, I don't think is appropriate because staff that may not be the will of the entirety of council. So I think it's good if we make a motion and then staff can bring this back with that change, but just so that we're clear that the rest of council feels that this is a change that does need to be made. And yeah, so.
I think wasn't being clear. It's not that I don't want it to come back. what I would say is I thought we didn't make those decisions in a policies and priorities meeting. That now that I've talked about it, it's essentially a notice of motion, I guess. I'm looking at CAO Tourville. Because I'm not sure. I just understood that this was not the place where we made motions.
So no, go ahead, Miss Torval. Sorry, I'm hitting the clear all button by accident and clearing you there, so yeah, I'll gotta work on that. Ms. Torval.
Thank you. We make motions in policies and priorities committee meetings. We just made a couple to adopt our minutes, and we made one to amend the agenda, to vary the agenda. What we don't do in policies and priorities meetings is make motions regarding monetary stuff, like money, purchasing stuff. We forward those on to a regular council meeting. And what I would like to suggest with regards to this particular topic is to maybe have staff do some further research into the community charter and some other best practices, because according to community charter, I guess reconsideration of a motion that can only be brought back by the mayor. So I don't know if we would be stepping out of line if we decided to do something different a year down the road or whatever. Or we could just leave it and deal with matters on a case-by-case basis. Like sometimes, yes, I can almost guarantee that it will be necessary to bring back a defeated motion a few months down the road, or, and deal with it at that time, and and that can be brought up in the report, or let us do some digging and come back before we pin something in that's illegal as to the community charter and not a good best practice.
Thank you, Ms. Torval. That makes a lot more sense. And just to yourself, Councillor Julik, there are times that in a meeting, I think it is appropriate to make motions so that we can just at least debate what we're suggesting so that staff has clarity. So in a lot of times I have seen it where it sounds like we're all in agreement, we're all doing this. All of a sudden, the action that is encapsulated by staff isn't quite what each of us thinks. And then they're stuck in like, well, I think this is what I gathered what you wanted. And it's just to add that specificity to staff so they're not in tricky situations. And we're also clear in giving our direction on what we want to change, just so it's very clear. That's all I want to do. And I am completely fine with not being on the winning side of a motion. I just sometimes I prefer to add specificity to staff because it is put them in tough situations. So. Okay, if there's no more discussions on that particular topic, I did want to bring up some discussions on page 17, when we're looking at our procedures at a regular meeting, councillor's business and what that looks like. So page 17, K, councillor's business. So in the past, this is a confusing agenda item on what this really entails. Traditionally, we try and use it for our council-appointed boards. Like, this is an opportunity for us to talk about what we've done at, so when I talk about the community forest or the South Peace Health Services Society. And the reason why we keep it to that versus community events that we've been to is to sort of limit time. And the information exchange, I believe, should be at a higher level versus I went to the tree light-up ceremony. It was good. We had a good time. I chatted with Joe. More of like, okay, at this council board or my appointments, we did this and it's important to the community. Why, right? So, yeah. Also, previously we've done written reports, and those written reports can be put on an agenda. I don't know if that's going to be the mayor's choice this time, but there's an opportunity previously. Anybody want to have a discussion on councillor's business? Councillor Julik?
Wow, looks like Miss Councillor Norbury and I are going to be on the opposite side of a lot of things. I think councillor's business should be whatever councillors want it to be. Like, I don't think, because maybe the discussion I look at this and I think that leaves it pretty open. Like, I think that we can have the expectation that would be what it is, but I don't know, I don't know how you would keep it to just high level. Because all it says is opportunity for council to report on their activities since the last meeting. So I guess I would ask how you were looking to maybe corral that?
So I guess, like, again, this is our procedure. I would ask what everyone wants to know. Like, do you feel that this is the appropriate time for us to discuss everything that we've been doing, or do you just want to hear about committees? Because also with that, we could be getting into bringing up agenda items that are not on an agenda, right? We talk about bringing up, we need to have unanimous consent to be talking about certain agenda items. And this is, I'm talking extreme ends, and the reason why I bring this up is because we have seen it, where people use this as an opportunity to say, I had a discussion in the public, and this is what happened, and we need to do something right now about it. And that is a concern because the rest of council does not have foreknowledge about the topic. We don't have background on it. Anyways, that aside, does everyone want to hear what we've all been doing each week or every other week that does not pertain to council business? My suggestion would be we would stick to our committees. What's everyone else's thoughts? Councilor Noxana.
I think it's limiting to say only committees, but we could say that pertains to council business. Do we care that you talked to Joe? No. Did you go to the tree light up ceremony and Public Works did an amazing job? Great. You did an amazing job. Let's do it.
So is that fair to say, like, community events that happen, we can discuss and we can use it as like a pat on the back for the public? What if it's not so great? What's our thoughts there?
I would, am I still allowed to talk because I'm red?
You're still red because I forgot to, but yeah, I'll allow you to follow up, Councilor Noxana, then we have Councilor Julik.
I think that we would have to use our common sense. Is it allowed to be said at a council meeting? And we need to be accountable for what we're saying at a council meeting. And does it pertain to the council business? Is it something the district is doing? Let's commend them on it. And if it's something on our appointed boards that needs to be brought forward, absolutely. But just who we chitty-chatted with, probably not council business. We don't need to know.
Thank you, Councilor Noxana. I have Councilor Julik and then myself. Councilor Julik.
I would agree with Councillor Noxana. I think it's just, for me, it's just a matter of we're all adults, and I think we have to trust each other to bring forward what we think is acceptable. I think that the mayor has the right to shut us down. Other councillors also have the right to say point of order. Well, I don't know if that'd be a point of order, but I guess for me, it's about building trust and building a connection with us as a team. And it might be exciting for me to go to the tree light up and be able to say, yay, staff, right? Because I think that those are really good opportunities to let staff know that we appreciate them. I understand that you're concerned where things could go off the rails. I think, though, that we have to get to a point where we police ourselves. And if we can't, then the mayor can do that job for us.
Thank you, Councilor Julik. Okay, the next one I wanted to bring up is, oh, sorry, is there any more discussion on that? All right, we'll use common sense. Notice of motion, so just because I know Councilor Julik has already planted the seed of her future notice of motion, the procedure is when we get to the notice of motion, we give our notice of motion and then we will discuss that notice of motion at our next scheduled meeting. So if tonight was a notice of motion period, we make the notice of motion, I make the motion XYZ, and then, okay, we'll bring it up for debate at the next council meeting where, and during that time, I highly recommend to everybody to reach out to that individual to get information on that. Yeah, just so everyone's clear, because there are things that we want to bring up, we want to see have happen, we might want to see a report, might want to send a letter of support, and that's the best way to do it, because then we have the opportunity to get that idea of what we're going to be debating, and we can get that, do our research on the information surrounding it. So, yeah, does that sound reasonable to everybody? Okay, moving along. Councillor Julik, looks like you want to speak. Go ahead, Councillor Julik.
I should have wrote this down. I apologize as I'm flipping through papers. Meeting closures. It says that meetings shall be closed 3 hours unless a resolution is passed to continue the meeting. Does this happen often? And who lets us know that we've been going for 3 hours? Would that be the CAO who says, enough, you guys?
Thank you, Councillor Julik. So, yeah, I can tell you how we've managed it previously. We notice it comes 8 p.m. Ms. Torval's waving her hand at us saying, oh, by the way, and then we'd immediately stop debate, and then we would make the motion to extend the meeting past 3 hours. And the only way that we would extend that meeting past those 3 hours is by a successful motion to be passed. If not, the meeting ends immediately and we are adjourned. Does that answer your question? Staff, any more to add to that? No, this is how we do it, okay. And then the only other point I wanted to discuss, unless anybody else had something to discuss, was the 24, so page 19 of our agenda, was the question and answer period. So now that we're all here, there are times when, excuse me, staff, did you have something? Okay. The question and answer period, sometimes people like to come in and use the question and answer period as a platform to air their grievances. I think it's important for all of us to remind each other that the question and answer period is questions in regards to the agenda item, to the agenda in front of us, and they do need to be in the form of a question. And just a heads up, some people love to come in and give us heck, which is fine, don't get me wrong. The people, we are in the public office, we do deserve to get heck sometimes, but it does need to be in the form of a question. Like, who do you think you are? Any discussions on that? It's pretty clear. Okay, that's all that I had to discuss about that. And again, I think like this is our policy on how we conduct ourselves. We can always make changes. We can always use common sense to police ourselves. So any more discussion on 5.1, our procedure bylaw, or questions, debates? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to 5.2, a report dated November 14th, 2022 from the Interim CAO with the Policies and Priorities Committee Terms of Reference EO-9 for a discussion. So in this case, we have the opportunity to bring it up for information, which would mean we good and we move on. We don't want to talk about it, but if somebody would like to discuss it, we'd need a motion to move it for a discussion. So I'll allow for someone to make a motion. Councillor Julik, if you don't mind just hitting your mic there. Councillor Julik.
That council receives the Policies and Priorities Committee Terms of Reference for discussion.
Motion by Councillor Julik, seconder. Councillor Dussault. Any discussion on bringing it for discussion? All in favor? Carried. Okay. Councillor Julik.
So it says in here, the terms of reference, that they shall meet publicly at 5 p.m. every month. Because it's a term of reference, I'm assuming that that's easily changed if we decide to change it, or is it not quite so easily changed? And if it's not easily changed, then I would ask that that change shall meet publicly. I don't know if it has to have a time frame is all. That was the only thing that kind of popped out at me.
Sorry, Councillor Julie, can you refer to where it states the time? Oh, there we go. Proceedings. It shall be publicly met at 5 p.m. every month. I believe that staff did mention earlier that we are going to be discussing meetings at our next agenda, so we can discuss it at that point in time. Would that be correct, Ms. Torval? Ms. Torval?
Thank you, Council. Yes, and the Policies and Priorities Committee meetings is included on the council meeting schedule, so at that time, any changes that could be required at that time.
Thank you, Ms. Torval. Does that answer your question, Councillor Julik? It does. Okay, does anybody else have any more discussion on our terms of reference for our Policies and Priorities Committee? Seeing none, I will move to adjournment. I have a motion to adjourn. Councilor Noxana, seconded by Councilor Dussault. All in favor? Carried.